Hi, today we're going to take a look at some simple guitar chords and how you can solo over them and make it sound melodic and not just mashing up and down scales. We're going to look at a few different ways that you can begin to explore that and learn it, and I guess a few levels that you could have a go at when trying to solo melodically over a simple set of guitar chords. So let's take a look at the chords we're going to work on. It's going to be over a C, G, A minor, and an F chord. Now let's record that in so that it's locked in here. So, now that we've got the chord progression in there and we've got something to play along to, before we start looking at how to solo this, let's talk about what's happening here. So we've got 4 chords, and these chords are C, G, A minor, and F, and they're all in the key of C. So C is chord 1 of the key, G is chord 5, chord 6 of the key of C major, and we have F, which is chord 4 in the key of C major. So those chords, they're all going to fit if we can play a C major scale or if we can play C major pentatonic. Now the first go-to place, the safe notes for playing over this are the C major pentatonic notes, which is actually the same notes as A minor pentatonic. The way you know it's C major is if you take your minor pentatonic shape and you put your pinky on fret 8, we have these wonderful notes that we can play over this track. And you can play melodically over this, but you have to use your ear to check. The benefits of the pentatonic scale are it's a simple shape to memorize and learn. It's very easy to not play a bad note. So when you're playing full scales, you can play notes which sound not so good. Pentatonic scale, it's pretty much the safe notes. It's like having bumper rails on when you play, but it's also, I don't want to knock it, it's like 80% of the world's guitar solos are played in pentatonic, so it's a great scale that you need to know. And also, it gives your ear a chance to really be listening for, does this note sound good over the chord I'm playing? Over this kind of backing track where all the chords are in the same key, the pentatonic is a great go-to scale for you. So let's take a look at it and hear what we can sound like with pentatonic over this. All right, so pentatonic sounds good. The only problem with the pentatonic is that there's some of the chords, particularly one chord on this, where I'm not able to hit all of the notes in that chord. So particularly the F chord has notes which don't fit into the C major pentatonic scale. So they don't sound bad, but they don't really sound like I'm hitting the notes in that chord. So the next possibility, playing melodically, which is where people tend to head, is we can play the full C major scale. Let's look at what the full C major scale is. So the C major scale is if I take any place on my... If I take any C note on my guitar, it's a formula which can be applied up from there. So I have root, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, root. So that can be applied anywhere on the guitar. Now, if we learn the full major scale rather than the pentatonic, the benefits are we now have the full range of notes to play, which is great. We have all the notes that we can hear, and it ends up sounding like this. The problem with it is that when we practice the C major scale, it's all the notes at once, which makes it very hard to follow the chords. So often what happens is you'll end up playing scales up and down and searching with your ear for the right note for the chord. So I was guilty of for a long time, but I see it a lot too. Once we learn scales, we start having to search with our ear for the right note, and there is a lot of utility in that, and you should practice it. It doesn't always sound the most melodic. I'm going to try and do an example of what I think this ends up sounding like. What I used to sound like a lot when playing full major scales is like this. Let's try it. Alright, cool. So, great way to practice scales, great way to get to know your fretboard, not sounding like the most melodic thing you've ever done on the guitar. Yes, you can make it sound better than I just did there, I'm sure. But by the nature of learning scales and scale patterns, they don't always sound the best. So what is another answer? What is a way of dealing with this? Well, so there is a third more melodic way that you can start to do, and it's a bit more complicated. So following the chords is what I'm going to call this, or following the triads. And that means that you're going to actually follow what the chord shapes are on your guitar and be able to see them while the chords shift. And it doesn't have to be for every chord, but just to give you an example, is if I'm playing on strings 2, 3, and 4, which are where most of our soloing takes place, on the D string, the G string, and the B string, if I know where the chords are, so I know I've got a C chord there, I know that's my G chord, I know my A minor chord is here, and I know my F chord is here, with that information, I can produce something which is hopefully a bit more melodic and actually follows the harmony, the chords, the notes that it's implying, and come up with something which sounds quite nice. Let me do an example where I just follow those chords. I'm just going to only play notes which are in the chords so you can hear them. And let's hear what that sounds like. Alright, cool. So I was just following the triads there, just trying to play notes that were in the chord. And obviously I'm doing it in one area of the neck so that the solo kind of makes sense. If we're in one area of the guitar, the solo actually sounds like it was a singer singing in that one place. Now, where this becomes a bit more fun is if I follow the triads, I know what chord I'm on, which is no small challenge. That is a mean feat. And we add in some notes of the pentatonic, or maybe even the full scale, as I pass between chords. Let's see what that sounds like. This would be a level 4, if you will. It's being able to kind of see both or use both. All right, cool. So those are the 4 levels to try. Take a simple chord progression and work with where you're at. So if you feel like pentatonic's a good place to start working at, that's cool. But know that it's important to eventually be able to do all of them, especially where people get stuck, I think, is in the scales. Scales up and down. Have fun. If you have any questions or there's anything you'd like me to dive into a little bit deeper that I've mentioned in this session, just leave me a comment below and I'd love to hear from you, and I'll see you next time.